If I was a betting man, it wouldn't be on basketball this weekend. We're going to see a lot of things probably pick up, most likely volatility, a lot to cover. We got an omnibus bill that seemed to get passed or will get passed. We got some changes in the currency market, and we are also seeing some interesting stuff around NVIDIA and the limits of physics. All that and much more on today's episode of Money Never Sleeps. I also forgot to mention that the dollar is kicking ass today. Welcome back to Money Never Sleeps. We're here for the weekly close. After the markets close today, I'm joined here with Mr. House. I'm always glad to have him here. Before we get into anything, we are not financial advisors. Nothing we say is financial advice. We're just a couple of guys like talking about the market, seeing where we can make plays. If you guys want to make any moves in the market, consult with your financial advisor. Do your own research. We're not responsible for any money you make or lose. So congratulations. House, thanks for being here today. No Jay Webb because he's too busy watching Boo Booey. So we're gonna have a good old time, talk about the markets, some shit that's happening on the close. How are we doing today?
Doing pretty well. Can't complain. Just got back last night from a trip to San Francisco. I was at
Nice.
the Game Developers Conference, GDC. So it was a fun time, but definitely a little bit tired.
San Francisco got great food, man. One of my favorite places to visit. You know what's
Yeah,
funny about
food
San
was.
Fran?
Hmm?
One of the funny things about San Fran is like the sketchiest places end up having like the best food out there. That's the one thing I've always realized. It's
Yeah,
like always the dives.
not for sure. Well,
Glad to have you
hi.
back. Uh,
Glad to be back, but yeah, let's jump into it.
yeah, let's do it. Where should we start today? Should we start with a little bit of our government? Talk about some omnibus bill that's getting passed? Because
Let's
I think
do
it
it.
was 1,014 pages, and they all got kind of received it last night, and they had to have the bill done by midnight tonight. So one thing about our Congress is that they are very fast readers. So there's definitely some pushback about this because the House was like, "Yep, looks good to us. Let's send it forward." And again, this is like the 15th time. And again, I'm exaggerating here, hyperbole, please. But we've seen that this bill and this budget has absolutely been pushed back and back and back each time. Seems like it's going to get past this time. They're avoiding a shutdown, which seems like we kind of have to always assume that there isn't going to be a shutdown, but at the same time address it as if there could be because. What do we know, right? We're just a couple of outsiders talking about the market, but it seems like this thing is getting pushed through. There's definitely some heat from some people. Marjorie Taylor Greene looking like she's very upset with Speaker Johnson. There's no news there. But yeah, this is another thing where we're seeing $1.2 trillion being spent on, that will be spent on this bill. I saw a good chunk of that was also going towards defense spending too. So that's really interesting, right? We could even bring up how it seems like maybe things are escalating a bit too. It's really interesting to see how maybe some of those stocks kind of perform once this does get passed in the next few weeks. It's really interesting to see a lot of what comes from this because again, it is a lot of spending and it's at a time when there's also a lot of people that aren't necessarily buying T-bills. So it's interesting where they're going to get this money. Maybe Jerome Powell prints some, who knows? Uh, we're getting there. We're getting there. We're definitely getting the QE at some point, but again, they're not committal about being non-committal, right, Chris? So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out there. But the interesting thing too is $1.2 trillion, that's a lot of money that they're spending. Is that not inflationary to some degree? Definitely is. So it's going to be interesting how I've said this is going to be interesting like 15 times in the past 2 minutes. But I'm really excited to see how this plays out in the coming weeks. Obviously, it's a big nothing burger in terms of shutdown, but there could be implications of a lot of the things that are hitting in this bill that could affect not only the markets, but also perception of the 2024 election.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's been a real testament to how deep the divide is in the partisan lines we've faced shutdown after shutdown, and now we've got these random bills just coming on with massive amounts of pork added on last minute, bunch of flyers, and it's getting to the point where like just ridiculous amounts of money are being spent on absurd things just to get the bill passed. Like I don't know if it was omnibus or if it was another bill, but I want to say it was a senator who'd passed away, still had like a bill dedicated to them for like $8 million to build a park in a city that wasn't one of their representations. And it was just like, what's going on here? Like, what are we doing here?
That's why
Is this
we,
what taxpayer money needs to go to?
dude. That's why we need Ron Paul back in Congress. That was my guy. He was the type of guy where if someone was like, let's in this bill, let's give someone a medal, right? He'd be like, well, why the hell? Why can't we all just chip in? Why do we have to give a medal out because and have the taxpayers pay for it, right? It's stupid. He was the type of guy that would say no to shit like that. Clearly, we just don't say no whatsoever anymore. But it's I know, Chris. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's me just babbling like an idiot sometimes when I can't think of the words to say. I'll just say it's interesting or it's not great, and then eventually I'll think of the words. But couldn't come up with it in the moment. Let's move on from this because again, this is no different than every other fucking time that they pass a bill. Let's talk about some forex currency, right? Because we did see something really wild last night. So for the past 2 months, the yuan has stayed at around $7.19, 7.19 yuan to one US dollar. That's kind of in the ratio. Saw it pick up. So in other words, the yuan is losing strength to the dollar. So I just want to pull up two things, two articles from Bloomberg. Go to this one. This is China gold FX market says yuan suffers worst day in 2 months. Like we were saying, the thing is, it's the central banks think that they can control the currency and the value of the currency. It doesn't work that way. It really depends on debt and how things are paid. And again, a lot of that's import export. How that gives strength to some of these currencies. We know that China has also been hurting severely when it comes to the exports. Their export economy. I'm also thinking that central banks they can't necessarily hold up the price of a currency itself, but they can definitely do things that hurt it more than anything. And, they kind of did do something this week, which doesn't surprise me that the yuan dropped. I didn't expect it to drop, but it doesn't surprise me when I look at this. This is China's $55 billion loan surges points to national team rescue. In other words, finding money to prop up their equity market, right? And you can kind of see this when the HSI was up like 400 points the other day, but then all the other indexes were not moving whatsoever. So they were just kind of focusing on the big one. But we know that their equity market has been terrible lately. It's just been, for the most part, it's been terrible. It's rallied a little bit since it hit that 14.6 level, I believe. But because of the fact that they are pushing money into the problem and nothing is really being resolved, we're kind of just putting band-aids over bullet wounds and waiting for something to happen. Now, there's been a lot of movement in Asia recently, right? We've got Bank of Japan that's raised rates. We also got Taiwan that raised rates too, their central bank. At the same time, we're seeing other central banks react. Bank of Mexico cut rates. Bank of Switzerland also cut rates, and now we're kind of waiting for the big three: Bank of Europe, we're also or the ECB. We're waiting for the United States, obviously, and then I think China's again another one that we're going to have to wait on. Japan obviously is massive, and we haven't even seen the implications of what they're doing. That's also why we're seeing kind of these Asian currencies drop because everything is focused on the equity markets. It's not necessarily the actual economy itself, which is why their value of their assets is dropping significantly, whereas the U.S. is probably the one that's going to be because the reserve currency that loss in the yuan and the yen is just going to bleed over into strength in the dollar. That's the thing. So it's really funny to see that. It's not funny, but it's just interesting. Once again, I was trying to avoid it so much. I keep saying it. Yeah, it's just China, pretty much finding all this money to put in the equity markets. It's not going to solve the problem, right? It's solving the illusion that everything's okay, but it's not necessarily solving the fact that the economy is slowing down. We're seeing deflation. People aren't spending money. Uh, it's not a problem that can be fixed with stimulus.
Yeah, no, I mean, ever since they had the initial stimulus, it's like, okay, but how long is this going to last and prop them up, right? They poured a bunch of money in. The market reacted negatively initially and then kind of chopped for a little bit. Like it was really just a matter of time, at least in my opinion. And I think too, looking at their allies, you brought up Russia at the beginning of the show. Russia has been knee deep in a war for over 2 years now, and they just suffered a devastating terrorist attack. So it's like, hey, you know, they're not gonna they might not be able to withhold the capacity economically to continue buying from China while they're trying to rebuild, continue to fight a war, and then there's so much brinkmanship with China and Southeast Asia that it's like they're also still supplying to North Korea, they're supplying to Iran, and there's so much going on right now that it's everyone's starting to have to fend for themselves or at least consider it. So it may be difficult for China to get a bailout without some sort of, I don't want to say like treaty or truce, but some sort of support from Western nations or some sort of like, hey, we all need to cool off for a second and help each other out here.
100%. And the other thing too is like, and again, we don't know much of what's happened in Russia right now. Again, it's very fresh in the news. We're just seeing kind of videos on Twitter and expecting to hear more about it as the weekend progresses. And again, interesting. Once again, it happens towards the end once most financial markets are closed. But it's really interesting. I fucking said it again. Fuck me. It's something that we're going to keep an eye on because say
No.
there is some type of escalation that does happen, it's right there on Europe's border, right? That's a big problem because, and the reason I bring up Europe specifically is because I've been talking about the strength of the euro for a long time, and we know that a lot of those countries in Europe are in absolute recession. Some of them even in depressions in some of their sectors. But the reason I bring that up is that euro probably has inflated that price. I don't think it's worth what it's currently trading at. If something were to happen where it's more problematic, I mean, it's very possible they get into a place where they have to print more, and that just brings the value down. And they're going to have to kind of stimulate an economy or stimulate several economies to the point where it's like, okay, we're going to see mass unemployment. We're going to see us potentially on the border of an absolute war, and it's like, what do we do? And what does that do for the dollar? It brings it up, and again, it brings the other currencies down, and a lot of people are just going to want that dollar, and unfortunately debts are probably going to be being recalled. To be kind of like what do you call it? To transition here, let's talk about debt itself because a lot of it's due today. Bank Term Funding Program dropped by $17 billion last week. That's a big amount. That's the first week that payments were due. We're down to 150 billion. We can see that it's coming down. Let me remove this red line here, but we can see that it's coming down. It's a pretty steep drop. What is that? 17.28 billion, 10% or so that it's dropped. 37, I believe, $37 billion is due today. So that's a big amount as well. And we have another, I think, 20 and then like 14. There's a lot of money that's coming due in these first 4 weeks, right? And when we're seeing this, the banks obviously need cash. And we were talking about it earlier this week that they're selling off bad debt in order to get cash on hand. Maybe it's for this. Who knows? The thing is, the Fed has been asking them to use the discount window. They don't want to use the discount window because the last few banks that have used the discount window had bank runs on them. So I think that's what they're trying to avoid. I also saw that Bank of America had lost a lot of money in the past week or so. A lot of deposits had fled. Oh my gosh, I'm out of my mind today. Absolutely fled. So we're seeing problems still in the banking sector. We're seeing that debt is coming due. The dollar's getting stronger. There's a reason why the dollar's getting stronger against some of these currencies. People need it. They want it. But the thing is, as the dollar gets stronger, that's risk off territory, right? And we're looking at equities at all-time highs. We're seeing problems globally, both in obviously, in the economic in terms of economics with recessions. I mean, even a country like New Zealand, which isn't massive, they entered a recession I think 2 days ago or something like that. We're seeing that plus a lot of escalation. Like we're probably going to see knock on wood we don't, but there's probably going to be escalation from what's happening right now. I'm very very cautious when I look at the equity markets and I'm seeing these banks because everything was going great until it doesn't, right? That's the big thing we have to watch out. And the dollar, and I think gold, even recently, even though I think gold was front running it, kind of pointing that there are problems in the system. And just to last thing I'll say about the banks and all this debt that's coming due with the dollar is that we're seeing a lot of these bonds that are bad, and the rates remain high. They're still underwater. They have to hold them to maturity. Otherwise, if they have to sell them and they need cash, guess what? They're going to lose even more. That's a reality that these banks don't want. They don't want to lose the value of those treasuries that they bought back in 2020. Some of them are some of them are 5 years, some of them are 10 years. So right now, these 5 years, and it's like, well, we're getting close, but at the same time, it's like, kind of need the cash now. Something bad were to happen to the banking system, they're going to be selling at a loss. That's just going to be absolute garbage junk bonds that they're going to be holding. So it's going to get very, very real, I think, in the coming months. And the dollar right now, I mean, let me pull up the dollar real quick, and I'm going to get into the fun stuff, the crypto stuff that you and I both want to talk about. Put this dollar here. Dollar's pulling back a little bit right now. I'm not worried about that, but it broke a huge level of resistance. It's probably going to close up. Actually, it did close above it, right? Trading day's over right now. Yeah, it closed just above it. This is on the weekly. Let's go to the daily. Daily, it's easier to see. Boom, right there. So what it looks like to me is that we, even though we're overbought on the stochastic RSI, I think that we are going to push up here. We closed above this purple line. This purple line has been a huge level of resistance for a long time. Back here in February 2024, back in November 23, back in October 2023. We finally hit it. We broke above it. And it's interesting too that we got below it. I know I just said it again. Fuck. We just went below it. Looks like we were going to get the golden cross, and we didn't. Got that retracement back on Wednesday, FOMC. But the past few days we bounced from that and we pushed up, and we're probably gonna get the golden cross now. And the last time we got a golden cross in the dollar was back here. And we can see that from where we got the golden cross, there was still a huge move to the upside, right? I mean, we're pretty much right where we were when we got the golden cross. It was about a 3% move to the upside. So 2.953, almost like 3 points for the dollar. So if that tends to be the same scenario that happens here, that puts us roughly, say, right around here. 107.386, which is this level of resistance that we found in the past. Now, if it ends up being that it is risk off and some of these equities start selling off, and again, we know that Q1 earnings are also coming up, we could have the dollar by June start testing some pretty high levels, in my opinion. It's going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, but I don't know, man. Out of anything in the market right now, if I were expecting it to go up, it's probably the dollar and volatility. Again, not financial advice whatsoever, but I think that a lot of the things that are problematic are coming out on the weekend, and that causes problems for volatility when markets open on Monday. So limit ups and limit downs are going to be something that could happen, but that dollar is not a sign that it's going to be limit up. It's likely we're going to start seeing a lot more limit downs. Let's see here. Any thoughts on that, or should we move on to crypto?
Yeah, let's move on to crypto.
Fuck yeah, let's do it. Where should we start? Should we start with Bitcoin? Should we start with these shit coins that everyone's making money on?
Let's do Bitcoin to start.
Let's do it. Let me pull it up on Coinbase. I think I got it on Binance right now. It's not a real exchange anymore. Never was. Probably getting shit from all the bots right now on Twitter for saying that. But Bitcoin on Coinbase. Is Coinbase even a real exchange anymore either? It's closed half the time. People can't sell. But yeah, this is Bitcoin right here. A lot of people are saying that Bitcoin is going to shoot up from here, right? I think a lot of people still believe that we're going to see a higher high for Bitcoin. I'm not so sure. And again, maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't, but this right here, this FOMC thing kind of got erased to the point where we're probably going to come down and test this 50 moving average. That would be a logical move, I think. I don't know if it's going to happen today, if we're going to get a flash crash. I think that the stochastic RSI could actually stay oversold for a period of time until we get there, and then maybe we push up. But I'm not convinced that this move here is, the beginning of anything to the ups, or this is going to continue to the upside. I think that testing this 50 moving average is going to be key level of support that maybe we get a good bounce for, maybe like a $5,000 bounce or so to the upside, and maybe come somewhere around this range. But I think what we're seeing here is very similar to what we saw on the way up, right? We saw these moves up, and because we're not finding a lot of volume, we're seeing the volume kind of tail off here on the daily. Obviously, these sell-offs are getting a little bit more intense. We're starting to see a lot of volatility back and forth. $6,000 up, $3,000 down, another 18. I said 6,000, 3,000, $1,800. I just want to say 18,000, $1,800 coming back down. You see a lot of that volatility when you're at the bottom and you're at the top of a move. And I'm thinking that we could be at the top of a move. I'm not saying the top of the market is in whatsoever, but it seems like the only reason that we bounced here for FOMC was because there was also $2 billion worth of tether that was printed. Otherwise, this thing dropped $14,000 from the high. I think just the fact that we haven't tested this 50 is going to be crucial. I mean, last time we tested it was in February, and you got a good bounce off of it, but I think that we're going to have to test this here, and eventually, let's see this on the weekly. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty ugly weekly chart, right? We got 2 more days to see where we close, but if we close, below 62,000 or so, 62.9 or something like that, there's a good chance that we could see this continue, this pattern to the downside. I don't know where it'll stop. Obviously, there's a lot of support here between 50,000 and like 44,000. 50,000
I
is
was
tons
gonna
of
say,
liquidity.
I think 48 is probably that's kind of the lowest I'm expecting it to drop right now. If it really tanks, maybe like 32, 36 range. Um, but I wouldn't discount a potential move up as well. Like I don't think now is the time where we hit like a mega all time high. Like I think if there is a move up, maybe 74, 75, try and break the previous. But I
Yeah.
think we do need to let a little bit more supply go and change hands, spread out a little bit to sustain those legs up. And I mean, I think that's one of the things we saw with that dump at the beginning of March, where it was just one guy unloaded the clip. Right, I think we're going to see that happen a few more times, and that's going to give both newer retail, veteran crypto traders, buyers, and also institutions time to continue to accumulate more. Because we've seen Michael Saylor recently. He's putting out promissory notes, converting them, and he's buying Bitcoin like crazy. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's gonna be the potential fall that we were both thinking like pre at like worse than FTX or down near those levels. But I do think we see probably some sort of a dip. But my best guess is we probably land somewhere between like 45 and 48 if we do go that low. And if we go up, maybe like 76 high.
I think we do. I think there's still a possibility that we do go to the FTX low. At maybe not as low as I thought. I will say that, but I do think that we do get back into that 20 to 15K range. I think that's very possible. And the only reason I say that is just looking at a few things here. Obviously, it's very different now that the equity market is so intertwined with at least Bitcoin. There's a lot of people that definitely want Bitcoin now and exposure to it. I do think that with Bitcoin being so volatile, though, and again, 15% change in some of those ETFs for people who probably aren't used to that type of volatility, that wasn't fun for them. I think if it starts to prove a loser, they're going to sell off, and that's probably going to impact the price of Bitcoin and the ETFs. Obviously, the ETFs if they're selling that off. But the reason I look at this is because this kind of reminds me of a time back in February of 2022, right? We're up pretty high, right? We had a pullback. I think we're kind of like in this range right now. This is November, or is February? February, somewhere around here, or maybe I got this wrong, but I do think that we have that pullback, like you said, like maybe to that 48 range. I see a lot of liquidity sitting around 50 to 52, but 48, I definitely think that we could dip down to. And I think the 200 EMA is around there somewhere. But when we're looking at this here, I think that's what we're seeing is going to probably be a pretty big move down, and then we're going to get a really good bounce. I think we do get that good bounce. And then from that bounce, that could be the last type of let me just get out of this thing. And then we see something very similar to, May of 2022, June of 2022, where we push down significantly, a lot harder. Maybe not to the same levels, right? Maybe we get to the FTX lows by the end of the bear market. That's when everything kind of gets really dicey. A lot of retail finally capitulate and they do sell off some of their coins. I think that's possible. But I still believe that 100% what we're seeing here is all manipulated to the point where we're seeing low volume drive this market. And because we got low volume, that tells me that once we do get a lot of volume, and a lot of that volume is probably going to be sell pressure if the price isn't going up, there's a good chance that we could see some of those levels tested. And again, we have no whatsoever from like 28 to 40, no support on this move to the upside. And the same with from 44 all the way to, 73 or so. We got, and this is on the weekly. I'm not doing anything crazier than that, but the type of support you're looking for is back in history and very different scenario, right? 2021, a lot of money. 2024, a lot of money, but not in the right hands. That's my personal opinion. So I think that it's going to be interesting. We either get to the point where Bitcoin is actually the asset that holds up the best in terms of a really major market pullback, or it proves to be just an asset like no other that is going to sell off because people need cash ultimately. So I definitely see your scenario. I also think that there is a possibility that something bad could happen. And since this is the first run at it, maybe it gets that bad, but I'm really interested to see how it happens. I said it again. I'm like on crack with that word today.
A lot of interesting stuff going on right now.
Let's put it this way. I hate this market so much, but I'm so invested in watching how everything plays out that if it's good or bad, I'm here for the ride. I like again, I have no place other than my banks. If Bitcoin wants to just stay at like 48, like you were saying, so be it. Like there's nothing I can do about it and just get in, just trade it a different way. But I think that everything is too fucking good right now, and I think that that kind of lends to people's hubris kind of getting ahead of themselves to the point where there's no we'll never see a bear market ever again. When was the last time I heard that? Literally October of 2021. So yes,
Funny.
Chris, we definitely need it. We need that in the Four Loco episode. uh that's definitely something that we all three of us got to get on. But that's all I got for Bitcoin, man. Again, I'm bearish as fuck, so anything I say is gonna be to the extreme. Anything else that we could take a look at? Should we look at Solana real quick and then kind of talk about some of
Yeah, let's
those
do it.
stupid coins? I'm not gonna pull up any charts of those.
Yeah, no,
I'm
I'll
not trying to
preface
get
it by
canceled.
saying I'll get my part first because it'll be a little bit shorter. So I missed almost all of the more recent Solana meme coin action. I actually did have a few nice plays prior to my trip. But yeah, the dicier and racier end, I was not here for, and I caught the aftermath on Twitter, but was not a live spectator. But it seems a little bit over the top, to put it lightly.
I have no problem with people buying whatever they want, but you deserve to lose fucking everything if you think you're gonna get rich with some of these things, right? The only one, and again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not giving you financial advice. I know someone listened to me and bought ball sack coin, but that's that's the only one that I thought had any type of any type of character to it. I think the rest of that stuff, it's like, are we real? Is this the future of finance? Or really believing that some of these stupid names and some of these things that are just absolutely like just beyond stupid that you're going to be buying into these projects? Like I saw Hitler on one of them. What are we doing? What the fuck are we doing in 2024 with the little money that most people have after being laid off?
See,
Insane.
that's why I like tokens like Whiff, like dog Whiff hat, where it's
Mhm.
just like a cute little dog wearing a knit hat, right? And the dude who originally made the picture that became the meme, he ended up auctioning off the picture, and he made a good bag off of it. I don't know if he was involved with the token itself, but it's like, hey, that's what it's all about right there. The hat stays on.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, you brought up this great point with me when I was messaging you earlier about it's player versus player right now, right? Just make as much money as you possibly can off the next sucker, and that's pretty much what a lot of these people are doing. And at some point, it's going to run out, right? I think, like you said, the cuter meme coins, the Doge, the Whiff, you know, Shiba Inu, and again, those are probably more. I hate saying that they're established, but they're more established shit coins than some of these other ones here. But because of that, I think that there's a lot more. There's a bigger market for some of these things. Some of these Nazi
Yeah,
coins are not going to be on Coinbase. Whiff could be on Coinbase, right? That's the type of thing
I
you're
think
thinking about.
Whiff got listed on Binance, if I recall correctly. They
Yeah,
got they
they
got some
list
big
everything.
listings already.
They listed everything. They listed BNB, so that tells you about them. But yeah, these coins are just so stupid, and like I said, I don't care what you buy, but I just think it's so fucking dumb that people are actually putting money towards things that are like clearly it's not going anywhere. No big whales coming in. You're playing against other idiots that are hoping that this thing goes. This is an absolute casino. But I do want to show up Solana itself, the actual token, because we're seeing that it's pulled back pretty good since the height. Right, it went to about $210, higher than I expected, but it's okay. We're also looking at this on Mexia. Let's not look at that on Mexia. Let's look at this on Coinbase. Something with volume. Right? Yeah, here's the volume. That's better. But we're seeing this here, and it's down. What would that be percentage wise? It's down about 18%. So that's a pretty good move. I'm really, really cautious right now with alts because there's two scenarios that could happen, right? Bitcoin goes up, alts kind of get that last pump, right? Just money kind of like rotating, capital rotation. But if
Mhm.
alts tank with Bitcoin, then you're not getting an alt season, right? I think that's kind of the scenario that we're at, right? Um, I think Bitcoin dominance obviously going to 56, and then maybe alts get killed there. 56, 57, and then alts get killed from there, that could lead to, okay, that's a pretty good chance that the trend is no longer to the upside. But right now, it's that very cautious, being careful about where this can go, because I definitely think that alts have small enough market caps to the point where they can definitely push the price up significantly really quick. And then that could be, the blow off top. But at the same time, if the market just isn't there, there's more supply than there is demand. It's very possible that these things just absolutely tank. And by tank, I'm not talking about like, you know, 10% and then it bounces back five. I'm talking about probably like 20 to 30% just bleeding out. And they would bleed out even more on their BTC pairs, right? Like 19% drop from here would put us at the 50-day moving average. And we're so overextended from that here on Solana. Let's take a look at some of the other ones and see how Cardano's doing. Cardano's below the 50 moving average, right? I was seeing a lot of people say that that could push up to, to $1 or so. I don't know. That's questionable here. It's had a really good run, but you're below the 50 moving average. I would assume that if something bad were to happen where the market does pull back, you're testing the 200 moving average, right? What are the other ones that are doing fairly well? AVAX was doing pretty well there for a while. Yeah, over the 50-day moving average. I want to say that there's still a little bit room to the upside for some of these things, but at the same time, my risk off attitude with how strong the dollar is, I kind of want to say that it's going to back test. It really depends on the project itself if money does come in, but I think that there's a good chance that we could see a pretty good alt pullback. Jerome Powell kind of set the stage that things are getting better from his speech, but if anything, I think it was just setting the stage for letting a lot of people get long once again and seeing how those funding rates those pile up. So if those continue to get as bad as they were prior to the drop from 73,000 to 60,000 or so, I can kind of tell you where we're heading from there. Maybe a quick little push to the upside and then wiping everyone on the downside. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got on the crypto front. Anything else you want to go over real quick before we wrap up?
Yeah, one thing that I think would be interesting to look at is optimism.
Yeah.
And the reason that I bring it up is I know we were falling a little bit over the fall and winter, and it had a massive, massive leg up. I think we started talking about it sometime when it was hovering around like $1.50, and then it dropped a little bit further to $1.15. But now it hit a new ATH about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and was just about coming up to $5. But I think part of the narrative that's playing into that right now is this whole super chain narrative, right, where all their L2s or all their contributions can be scaled back to optimism, and they're technically like they're L2s themselves. They're not L3s. They're built in the same stack. And right now there's just the optimism token. There's no base token. Blast will have its own token, and it's not technically part of the super chain because they just forked ops code. But they just passed their fault proof, or they were testing them to strengthen their network security. So there's a lot going on right there. And then I think the last thing on the op front was a private buyer purchased like $89 million worth of tokens from the Optimism Foundation while they were priced pretty high. So yeah, got someone's convicted, but I think as optimistic rollups, or if optimistic rollups continue to succeed, the the op token and the super chain narrative will definitely be stuff to follow.
Yeah, I definitely think this is going to be one to definitely load up on if the opportunity gets there. There are certain coins where you kind of know that the narrative is kind of pushed them through a bull market. Kind of seems like it's going to be optimism is definitely going to be one of them. Very similar to how I think it was the last bull market with AVAX was trading fairly low, and next thing you know, the thing was up significantly higher. Then people started realizing how great of a chain that Avalanche itself is, right? And then once that kind of happened, it just blew up to like 200 and something dollars, I think, a coin. This is definitely one that I'm definitely gonna be putting aside a good amount of cash for to pick up. Nothing crazy, right? I'm not gonna put
Have
life
you
savings there,
have
but
you used any ETH 2s since the Ding Coon upgrade? So it would have been last Friday.
no, not at all.
So that was I think it was EIP 4844. Probably got one of those digits wrong. But basically what it did was it just significantly reduced the gas fees on layer twos. And now like optimistic rollups, my transactions have been like less than a cent.
Oh shit.
Arbitrum has been like 5 cents a transaction. Yeah, like it's So that's another thing that plays into that, right? Is now layer twos are already cheap. These started getting a little bit more expensive as L1 rose, and now they're just cheaper than they were previously. So pretty fire.
That's actually pretty amazing. Fuck man, what was the you? I got to start using Arbitrum too. You sent me that one great exchange, that Dex, and I'm like, kind of want to get back into it, but that seems like I'm going to be using that probably in the next coming weeks if some of these prices get to where I think they are. I might be putting in some shorts, but that's all I have on crypto. I do want to show two things real quick that I just saw on Twitter. And again, one of them I've seen a few days ago, so we won't talk about it too much. But this is one that I just saw today. And this is kind of talking about the commercial real estate and how this is a problem. But we are looking at Rialto Capital Management has surrendered Tower Plaza, 205K square foot office building in San Mateo, California, to its lender. Get used to this. You're going to see a lot of these things happening soon. A lot of these buildings are going to either be surrendered, sold for extremely cheap prices. There was another one recently where it was paid like, I can't remember what it was. It was insane amount for this building, but it was cut in half. And the difference between how long ago it was paid for and what it was sold for was a matter of 9 years. 9 years, and I think it was cut by literally 50%. So people are offloading, and we know that there's a ton of winding up orders that are generating in China right now. Problem is, if they're all winding up and trying to sell off that debt, that means it's like a golf ball through a garden hose. It's not going to be an easy route to get as much liquidity as they can out of it. It's going to be a lot of friction, and we could see a lot of things just go like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays. Again, the banks are all exposed to one another. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The other thing I did want to show is very funny to me.
This is the largest chip the world's ever seen.
Let's see if I can pull this up.
Can
we hear that?
This is the chip that goes into it. This is the largest chip the world's ever seen. This is beyond the limits of physics.
Right there. That's the part that pisses me off. I don't know if you guys could hear it or not, but it's beyond the limits of physics. That's Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, explaining chips to Jim Cramer. Where the fuck are we where we believe that something can be beyond the limits of physics to be created? I think that means it can't exist. I don't know if I'm being too literal here or I'm just not listening to this snake oil sales pitch, but
either it can't exist or the equation hasn't been calculated. It'd be one of the two.
I don't know, man. The other thing was too, I saw someone saying that there was actually a larger chip that was created. Again, I have no knowledge of that. I should fact check the guy on this, but it's funny to me how people still don't kind of realize that NVIDIA is nothing more than just a chip company, in my opinion. And some of the things that they're pitching to you, 100% just sound like a salesman trying to get in your pocket, right? It sounds like a car salesman to me. But just that language that he kind of uses is very hyperbolic and it gets people excited, mainly Wall Street and investors and people who don't have exposure to it, but see that the price is $940 a share. They want that exposure. I think the wool is being pulled over everyone's eyes when it comes to this. Don't get me wrong. NVIDIA has its purpose. There's a lot of great stuff. If you're a gamer for a long period of time, especially if you're on a computer, NVIDIA is great. I love NVIDIA for that. What I don't like it for is how everyone thinks it's the new thing. That's the problem. And this language here just kind of solidifies that nobody knows what this thing is. You're just buying into what he's telling you. So Jensen Huang, he might be a nice guy in real life, but I'm not going to get Jensen schlonged buying NVIDIA up here at $945. So that's all I got. Anything else today? Or can we just wrap it up?
Oh, yeah. Good to wrap. That was fun.
All right, everyone, have a great weekend. Chris, thank you for being here. All of our others that love to be here. You know, we got Ace, Leroy Jenks. Who else do we got? We got Bundy sometimes. Randy, you know, we appreciate you guys always being here. Scotch and Stocks. We will be back Monday. Limit up, limit down. Who knows? It's going to really depend on Asia. Also, what news comes out of the world over the weekend. Again, we know all the news comes out over the weekend, never in the trading hours. So that's why volatility has been crushed like crazy. Maybe we get some pickup soon. But other than that, thanks for being here, guys. I'm excited. It's going to be interesting. I did that one on purpose to see what happens, but we will be back Monday. Take care and have a great weekend. Boo booey.
See you guys.